The bells of Hawthorne Academy rang like they always did, but today there was something different in the air. Whispers scattered across the hallways, and tension settled like a storm cloud, ready to burst. No one knew it yet, but in the next 48 hours, everything would change. Keanu Reeves stood at the school's entrance, taking in the sight of the towering old building. Hawthorne had always been a quiet place, a sanctuary of knowledge for students and faculty alike. But something was off. He could feel it in his bones. There was an undercurrent of unease that hadn't been here when he first arrived. If you want to know what happens next, if you're curious about the dark secrets hiding within these walls, make sure to hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what's about to unfold. The headmaster, an elderly man named Mr. Hamilton, had called Keanu in personally. The school's reputation had always been spotless, and any disturbances were rare. But this was different. It wasn't just the news of some strange illness circulating through the student body. It was something far worse. Inside, Keanu passed by the familiar faces of students and teachers, most of whom seemed oblivious to the storm brewing around them. But there were some, those with pale faces, distant eyes, who couldn't hide their discomfort. The rumours had started small, whispers of a virus, nothing too alarming at first. But then the symptoms began showing up. Fainting spells, fever, an unnatural silence that seemed to engulf whole classrooms. It was as if a virus wasn't the only thing spreading, so was fear. As Keanu walked into the main office, he overheard snippets of conversation. "Did you hear? Sarah collapsed in the hallway. Again. They're saying it's the new flu, but I don't know. It doesn't feel like a flu." A nurse in the corner glanced nervously at the door before slipping into the staff room. Something wasn't right. The air felt heavy, like the calm before a storm, but no one knew when the storm would hit or how bad it would be. Keanu turned to face Mr. Hamilton, who looked older than Keanu remembered. The weight of something dark hung on his shoulders, though his voice remained steady. "We need your help, Keanu. The virus, it's spreading faster than we expected. We don't know what it is or how it's affecting our students." Keanu nodded, eyes narrowing. "I'll take a look around. Keep your staff calm. We need to figure out what's going on before it gets out of hand." With that, the investigation began. Little did Keanu know, he was about to uncover something much bigger than a simple virus, and the enemy he would face wasn't just invisible, but hiding in plain sight. The virus spread faster than anyone could have imagined. It wasn't like the common flu, nor was it something easily identified. At first, students complained of headaches and dizziness, then came the fainting spells. Some collapsed in the middle of class, others in the hallways. A few students couldn't seem to wake up from their naps at all, and their temperature was dangerously high. No one knew what to make of it, and no one had answers. Teachers and students alike were caught off guard, unsure whether to continue classes or shut everything down. By the time Keanu began his investigation, the virus had already infected dozens. It wasn't like any sickness the school had encountered before. The doctors were baffled, sending patients home with no real treatment. The fever came and went, leaving an eerie calm in its wake. But the most terrifying symptom was the change in behaviour. Students who had been energetic and lively were suddenly listless, staring at nothing for hours. Some even became aggressive, their emotions heightened and unpredictable. As the days went on, rumours began to spread faster than the virus itself. Some whispered that the virus was a biological weapon. Others thought it was a side effect of an experiment gone wrong. What was most unsettling, though, was the complete lack of information. The administration was keeping its silence. They weren't providing updates and the teachers were left in the dark. Was it just a flu, a mysterious illness, or something more sinister? Keanu couldn't just sit back and wait for more answers. He started speaking with the students, trying to understand if there was a pattern to the outbreak. But the more he heard, the more questions he had. No one seemed to have a solid explanation. One student mentioned feeling dizzy only after sitting in the chemistry lab. Another claimed that the symptoms started after attending a special guest lecture in the auditorium. But none of this made sense. Could it really be the work of a virus? Or was something else happening behind the scenes? Keanu decided to speak to those who had fallen ill. He sat down with one of the students, a young girl named Emma, who had just returned after several days of being absent. Her face was pale, and her hands trembled slightly. "You don't remember much, do you?" Keanu asked gently. She shook her head, staring at her feet. "I woke up one morning. Everything was blurry. I just couldn't focus and then I fainted. I don't know why." As Keanu listened, he began to suspect that there was more to the virus than met the eye. Was it truly a natural occurrence, or was someone within the school purposefully spreading it? He wasn't sure, but he could feel it. The tension in the air, the secrets being kept. Keanu's investigation began to dig deeper. He started to notice strange connections between those who had been infected. Students who seemed perfectly fine one day were bedridden the next, with no clear reason as to why. Some, like Emma, had only attended a specific chemistry class or a biology lecture. Others, however, had all been in the same auditorium for the same guest speaker event. It was beginning to look like there might be a link between the virus and certain places, or perhaps a person. Keanu took his suspicions straight to the administration. He asked the headmaster if any outside visitors had been in the building recently, perhaps carrying something that could have triggered the outbreak, but the headmaster quickly dismissed the idea. "It's just an isolated incident. There's no reason to panic," he insisted. Keanu, however, was not convinced. Something about his response seemed off. The next day, Keanu spent more time talking to the students and staff. One of the janitors mentioned something peculiar. The auditorium. The ventilation system was acting up the night of that lecture. Some said the air felt strange. Could be nothing, but I noticed a few students coughing right after. Keanu's curiosity piqued. Could the air have been contaminated? And if so, with what? He dug into the school's maintenance records and found that the ventilation system had been recently serviced by an external contractor. It was becoming clear to Keanu that something wasn't right. This wasn't just a virus. There were too many red flags. The way it spread, the strange symptoms, and the lack of information from the administration pointed to something darker. The conspiracy theories that had initially seemed far-fetched were now starting to make sense. Was someone intentionally releasing a virus, or was the school unknowingly a part of something much bigger? Keanu's mind raced as he connected the dots. The more he investigated, the more he uncovered. The virus didn't just spread randomly, it seemed to target specific people in certain places. But why, and who was behind it? Could the administration be involved in covering it up? Keanu couldn't ignore the growing suspicion that there was someone in the school who knew more than they were letting on. The weight of the investigation began to take its toll on Keanu. He spent sleepless nights poring over documents, interviewing students, and reviewing footage from the school's security cameras. It was exhausting, and the more he uncovered, the more he realized how dangerous this was becoming. The virus was only part of the story. Keanu's fear grew with each passing day. Was he walking into a trap? Would he be the next target? He didn't know the answers, but one thing was clear. He couldn't back down. He had to keep digging no matter where it led. The closer Keanu got to the truth, the more it seemed like the school itself was a labyrinth of secrets. Could the enemy be hiding in plain sight? Could it be someone from within the very walls of Hawthorne Academy? Keanu's nerves were on edge, but his determination remained. He knew the truth was out there, and he was getting closer to it. As Keanu's investigation deepened, the walls of Hawthorne Academy began to close in on him. Every piece of the puzzle seemed to fit together, but the final pieces were harder to find. The virus was no accident. It had been deliberately released, and Keanu's instincts told him it wasn't just a random act of chaos, it was part of something far more calculated. But who would do such a thing? Who would target innocent students and faculty in a place meant for education? Keanu's breakthrough came one evening, after a long day of speaking with more students and searching through old school records. He stumbled upon something he hadn't expected, an old research paper filed away in a forgotten cabinet. It was a study conducted years ago by one of the school's prominent faculty members, Professor Adrian Ward. The paper focused on virus research and biological experimentation, and it detailed an experiment meant to create a new, controlled virus to increase human efficiency. It sounded like something from a science fiction novel, but Keanu knew it wasn't fiction. It was real. The professor had been using the school's resources to conduct illegal experiments, and now the results were unraveling everything. As Keanu dug deeper into Professor Ward's background, he uncovered a terrifying truth. The professor had been dismissed from a nearby medical institution for unethical practices. Yet somehow, he had found his way to Hawthorne Academy, where he continued his work in secret, hidden behind the school's walls. It was clear now, the virus wasn't just a random mistake. It had been engineered, intentionally unleashed on the school. But why? Was Professor Ward trying to prove something? Or was he working for someone else with a darker agenda? Keanu set up a meeting with Professor Ward. The professor welcomed him into his office with a calmness that unsettled Keanu. "I assume you've found my work interesting," Ward said, his voice almost amused. "It's always curious, isn't it? What we are willing to do in the name of progress." "Why the virus?" Keanu demanded, feeling the tension rise. "What do you want from this? Why target the school?" Ward's eyes glinted with an almost fanatical gleam. "It's not about what I want, Keanu. It's about what needs to be done for humanity. We're at a tipping point, and the virus is only the beginning. There's more coming, much more." A chill ran down Keanu's spine. "What do you mean more? What else are you planning?" Ward leaned forward, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "I was just the first step. The virus was the test. Soon, the world will see what true control looks like. The virus was only the start of a much bigger experiment, one that will change everything." Keanu felt the weight of the professor's words settle in his gut. It wasn't just a virus. This was part of a larger plan, and the stakes were higher than anyone could have imagined. He had to stop Ward before it was too late. The confrontation turned into a tense standoff, with Keanu's heart pounding in his chest. The professor was clearly not going to back down, and Keanu knew this wasn't just about finding the truth anymore. It was about saving lives. With the virus rapidly spreading, Keanu had no time to waste. He had to stop Ward's plans, and fast. "I'm shutting you down, Ward," Keanu said, his voice steady despite the rising fear in his chest. Ward smirked. "You think you can stop me? You're too late." Keanu grabbed a nearby phone and dialed for help, but before he could make a move, Ward's assistant, a quiet young woman who had been working behind the scenes, appeared with a syringe filled with the same virus Keanu had been investigating. She lunged at Keanu, but he was faster, dodging the needle and pushing her back. Ward, seeing his assistant's failure, moved toward a hidden cabinet, pulling out a vial of the virus's final stage. "You can't stop it now. The virus is already in the air," he said, his voice almost mocking. Keanu lunged, grabbing the vial just as Ward was about to break it open. They struggled, but in the end, Keanu managed to overpower Ward and take control of the vial, securing it before any harm could be done. The battle was over, but Keanu knew that the war was just beginning. The virus was still out there, and Ward had no intention of stopping. As Keanu stared at the defeated professor, he couldn't help but wonder, was Ward just a pawn in something much larger? Who else was involved? And was it too late to stop the spread of the virus? Just when Keanu thought he had uncovered the full extent of the conspiracy, a new piece of information threw everything into chaos. He had taken the vial of the virus to the lab for analysis, hoping to find a way to reverse its effects, when an unexpected message popped up on his computer screen. It was an encrypted file, one that he hadn't seen before. As he decoded the message, a shockwave of realization hit him. The virus wasn't the endgame. It was a tool, a weapon being tested on Hawthorne Academy as a pilot run. The real plan? A massive global operation. Professor Ward had been working with an underground organization that aimed to release a series of genetically engineered viruses around the world. The goal wasn't just control, it was domination. Those who survived the virus would be altered, modified to fit a new world order. Keanu's mind raced as he processed the information. This wasn't just about Hawthorne Academy anymore, it was about the entire world. And Ward wasn't the mastermind. He was a mere piece of a much larger puzzle. Someone higher up, someone with far more power, was pulling the strings. The stakes had just escalated to an unimaginable level. Keanu realized that stopping the virus was no longer the primary concern. He had to expose the entire organization before it was too late, or the consequences would be catastrophic. But who could he trust? Was Ward really the villain here? Or was he just another pawn in a game too dangerous to comprehend? Keanu knew what he had to do, but it would mean risking everything. The conspiracy was bigger than he ever imagined. The real enemy was still out there, and this time, Keanu wasn't just fighting a virus, he was fighting a war for humanity's survival. Keanu's heart pounded as he raced through the hallways of Hawthorne Academy, the weight of the world on his shoulders. He had spent days piecing together the mystery, uncovering layers of deceit and corruption, but now the clock was ticking. The virus that had spread so quickly across the school was more than just a threat. It was the first wave of something far more catastrophic. The tension in the air was palpable, like a storm that had gathered far too long and was now ready to burst. Keanu had tracked down every lead, interviewed every suspect, but the truth was more complex than he ever imagined. The virus was only one part of a larger, more terrifying plan, and now it was out of control. If he didn't act fast, the consequences would be devastating. The first few symptoms had been mild, a headache, a little dizziness, but as the virus evolved, its effects became far more severe. Students had started acting erratically, some becoming violent, others slipping into a fevered delirium. Keanu had seen it firsthand, students collapsing, losing control, their minds consumed by something darker than illness. And now, it was everywhere. Keanu had already secured the vial of the virus, but it wasn't enough. The virus had been dispersed throughout the school through the ventilation system, its grip tightening with every passing hour. The outbreak had spread too far, and there was no cure in sight. Professor Ward might have been stopped, but the damage had already been done. The world was at risk, and Keanu was the only one who knew the truth. The situation was dire. He had to find a way to stop the virus from spreading further, and fast. There was only one place left to look, the school's underground research lab. It was where everything had started, where Professor Ward had conducted his experiments. The lab had been sealed off after the professor's arrest, but Keanu had learned that there was something inside, a hidden file, one that might hold the key to stopping the virus for good. But the closer he got to the lab, the more obstacles he encountered. The faculty had begun to panic, some attempting to flee, others barricading themselves in classrooms. The hallways were filled with the sound of chaos, yelling, crying, the occasional crash as doors were slammed shut. Keanu pushed forward, moving faster than he ever thought possible, his mind sharp despite the overwhelming danger. As he approached the entrance to the lab, he was stopped by a familiar face, Clara, the assistant who had helped Professor Ward. She was standing in the doorway, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and resolve. "You don't understand," Clara said, her voice trembling. "You're too late. The virus is already evolving. Even if you stop it here, it's too late for the world." Keanu stared at her, disbelief mixing with anger. "You knew about this all along, didn't you? You're not just a victim. You're part of this. You've been helping Ward." Clara's eyes flickered with regret. "I didn't have a choice. You don't understand the bigger picture, the organization. They've been planning this for years. It's not just about control, it's about survival. We have no future unless we adapt, and this virus is the first step in that adaptation." Keanu's pulse raced. "Adapt? You're killing people for a new world order? For what? Power? Survival? Is this what you really want?" She shook her head. "It's not about what I want. It's about what has to happen. This is bigger than all of us. You can't stop it." Keanu's hand tightened around the vial. "I can stop it. I won't let you destroy everything for some twisted vision." Clara's expression hardened. "You'll have to kill me first." Without hesitation, she lunged forward, a syringe filled with the virus aimed straight at Keanu. He dodged just in time, his body reacting instinctively, and in that moment, everything shifted. The fight between them was quick and brutal. Clara was fast, but Keanu was determined. They struggled, but in the end, Keanu overpowered her, pinning her to the ground. He stood over her, panting, the weight of what he had to do weighing heavily on his chest. Clara looked up at him, her face contorted in pain. "You don't understand. You can't win this fight." Keanu stared down at her, his resolve hardening. "Maybe not today, but I can stop you now." With a swift move, he knocked the syringe from her hand and secured her, calling for help. As he stood there, breathing heavily, he couldn't shake the feeling that Clara wasn't just a pawn. She was part of something much larger, a piece of a game that had been in motion long before he arrived. Keanu wasted no more time. He rushed into the lab, knowing that every second counted. Inside, he found what he had been searching for: the research files, the notes on the virus's evolution, and the antidote that could stop it in its tracks. But it wasn't just the antidote he found. He also uncovered another shocking discovery. The virus wasn't the endgame. It was a precursor to something far more dangerous, something the organization had planned for years. Keanu's mind raced as he processed the implications. There was no time to waste. He had to act now, but there was a choice to be made. He could release the antidote and stop the virus here, saving the school and possibly the world. But in doing so, he risked revealing everything to the organization, whoever they were, and triggering a much larger war. The stakes had never been higher, but as Keanu prepared to administer the antidote, he realized something else. The virus wasn't just a biological weapon. It was a test for something much worse to come. And if he didn't stop it now, he'd be condemning everyone to a future controlled by those who played this dangerous game. He had to make a decision. Would he destroy the virus and prevent further harm, or would he risk everything and try to take down the organization behind it all? The clock was ticking, and Keanu knew he didn't have much time left. As he injected the antidote into his own veins, the pain surged through him. His vision blurred, but the effects of the virus began to subside. Keanu stood there, fighting against the dizziness, knowing that this wasn't over, not by a long shot. He looked at the files on the desk, the true story behind the virus still waiting to be uncovered. His role in this battle wasn't over, but for now, he had won. The virus was stopped, and the school was safe, at least for now. As Keanu staggered out of the lab, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Whoever was behind this would come for him, and when they did, he'd be ready. The virus was no longer a threat, and Hawthorne Academy was safe, for now. The antidote had worked, and the school had slowly started to return to some semblance of normalcy. But the cost had been high. The truth was out there, and it was far darker than anyone could have imagined. Keanu stood at the edge of the school's campus, watching as the students slowly returned to their classes, many of them still unaware of how close they had come to disaster. The faculty, though relieved, couldn't shake the feeling that something had been lost in the process. What had happened here? What had they all missed? The truth about the virus was only part of a much larger story. Keanu knew it, and he wasn't sure whether to be grateful or fearful for the knowledge he now held. His time at Hawthorne had been short, but it had changed him in ways he couldn't yet fully understand. The emotional toll was heavy. Lives had been at risk. He'd seen the fear in the students' eyes, the panic on the faculty's faces, and the rage in Clara's as she tried to stop him. It was a constant reminder of how easily things could spiral out of control. But even as he walked away from the school, Keanu couldn't shake the feeling that the real battle was far from over. The organization behind the virus, the one that had manipulated everything, was still out there. Who were they? What did they want? And why had they chosen Hawthorne as their test site? The more Keanu thought about it, the more questions arose, and each one led to darker possibilities. The truth had been uncovered, but it was only a fragment of a much larger mystery. The world was a dangerous place, and Keanu knew that what he had uncovered was just the beginning. The organization would not let their plan fail so easily. There would be more lies, more schemes, more battles, and Keanu would be ready. The crisis at Hawthorne Academy had been averted, and Keanu had uncovered the truth behind the mysterious virus that had threatened the school. He had stopped the virus's spread, confronted the antagonist, and brought some form of justice to the situation. But even as the dust settled, Keanu's mind remained restless. There were still too many questions. Who was the organization that had orchestrated it all? What were their true intentions? Was this just the beginning of something much bigger? Keanu knew that the answers were out there, waiting to be uncovered. And as he walked away from the school, he couldn't help but wonder, was the world truly safe? Or had they just scratched the surface of something far more dangerous? The hunt for the truth had only just begun. If you want to stay updated on this thrilling story and uncover more mysteries, make sure to hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what's coming next.